Welcome to NeuroNoodle's Neurofeedback and Neuropsychology Podcast, featuring tech legend Jay Gunkelman. He's the man who has read well over 500,000 brain scans, and Dr. Marie Swingle, author of iMinds. Our goal is to provide information and promote options for better mental health. The NeuroNoodle Podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.
Hello, hello. Less of the whole flash of the house in the background here. Although there's nobody home but me and the dog, and he's at my lap. So
good. That's America right there. Speaking of America, how was the any questions pique your interest from last night?
Well, you know, the cerebral folate deficiency. That's I think a hot topic within autism. About half to 3/4 of the autistics have a problem with cerebral folate deficiency, and it corresponds roughly with the incidence of epileptiform content in the same population. So, and you know, as treatable, folic acid can be used to treat it. So it, you know, but it how do you diagnose it? Spinal tap. So exactly, you know, who's going to line up for that? You know, although there is also a genetic that most of it is not, but there's a genetic variant as well. But there's only been 24 people identified. No, excuse me, 20 people identified. Less than 24 have been identified with that genetic anomaly. So.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a genetic test you can take to see if you're susceptible to autism. That was news to me.
Well, that's not. It's not going to end up showing all susceptibility, but that genetic test would identify whether you have cerebral folate deficiency as something that you're going to have genetically. And if you're going to have it, you can treat it. You know, again, you know, folic acid is something, it's 1 milligram per kilogram body weight, and you're treatable. And so, you know, it's pretty straightforward as a treatment.
So why don't we test for that?
Spinal tap.
So it's just driving that needle.
Well, I don't know how many people you've known that have had spinal taps, but there's a significant percentage of them that end up having significant headaches and things like that following it. That it's not always as benign as simply getting, you know, like an IV stuck in you for a moment or something. And if you've got it, the genetic variant is a very rare percentage of it. It's more common as a finding due to a specific syndrome, and the syndrome basically ends up having a Kearns-Sayre syndrome, which is an autoimmune antibody to the folate receptor. So you've got an autoimmune issue that can trigger it much more often than the genetic. And then it's different than folate as a problem, just as a, you know, you can have dietary insufficiency or be an alcoholic and have a B1, B9, B12 deficiency, or somebody who just got a B12 deficiency because of there's MTHFR genetics that end up giving you a methylation problem, so you can't make methylfolate. And anyway, there's a lot of metabolic things that can give you generalized folate deficiency. That's a different thing than cerebral. Cerebral, your general stuff is fine. Blood testing won't show it. You've got normal folate levels in the blood. It's just in the nervous system that it's missing. But if you have it is a general thing, then that's a big risk for pregnancy. Folate issues end up having neural tube spina bifida, neural tube disturbances. It's folate deficiency for the mother is really, really extremely problematic for the infant.
Would anything show up on the EEG when in utero, the mother, you just want to keep the mother less stressed. I get it, to have a happy baby, but is there anything you can do with the EEG when the baby is born to see if there's anything there to address things going forward, or it's just too young?
It's probably a bit early to be jumping in on that. The symptoms of this start after a year usually, so that does give you some time. It doesn't mean starting as early as you can wouldn't be a good idea because of, again, folic acid is a treatment for it. And so it's something if you had it. Now, the EEG isn't a way to diagnose it specifically. The EEG is diagnostically nonspecific, but it's very often a good prognostic tool because it predicts treatment. Uh, um, if an infant has epileptiform content in the EEG, at that point it may be a good idea for the epileptologist or neurologist to do a spinal tap to identify whether or not there is a problem with cerebral folate deficiency. So, seizure onset as an infant, it's a good reason to do a spinal tap.
Is SMR the only thing that trains the hypothalamus?
Well, they didn't read Sturman's work, did they? To start with, it's not the hypothalamus. It's the ventral basal nucleus of the thalamus, which is kind of down and on in the middle, but it's not the hypothalamus. And that nuclear body is basically associated with the somatosensory somatomotor area, and somatosensory more specifically. And it that nuclear body is responsible for the production of SMR. If you read Sturman's work, Sturman 2000 would be a perfect one. It's a review of his early work and all the way from the neural circuitry, the red nucleus, the muscle spindles, everything's in it. So, you can read about what's involved in that. Now, SMR treatment can stabilize your sleep, and sleep-wake cycling is hypothalamic, pituitary, pineal. I mean, there's a whole circuitry associated with that. But the SMR intervenes in the sleep cycle only by giving you a sleep spindle. That's all it does. And, all it does. I mean, that's a huge deal. How do you fall asleep? Well, you start from awake and you drop down to stage one. And stage one, you're drowsy. Stage one sleep isn't sleep. Stage one sleep, you drive the car in stage one sleep sometimes. Highway hypnosis. You're not asleep. You're not going out of your lane. You don't run into the car in front of you. You're kind of zoned out. Again, people drive the car in that state. I wouldn't recommend it because you're really close to stage two, and then you do drive out of your lane. But if you drift down into stage two, you get a vertex sharp wave. A vertex sharp wave is the response to a sound, and you see it at the top of your head at CZ. If you have good sleep spindles, you continue to descend into slow wave sleep. If you don't, you have sleep onset insomnia. Your vertex wave will wake you right back up. And you didn't fall asleep, you woke back up. So sleep onset's difficult. Well, what happens if you don't get your first half of the night's sleep? Most of your slow wave sleep is gone.
Port Low.
Yeah, I know. I can tell sometimes when I get a quart low, and down at
It's
12
not good.
ounces, boom,
Yeah, yeah.
back for a few minutes at least.
How's the eyeball?
Well, you can see it's no longer a bloody red mess.
Yeah.
It works well from the inside out, and the steroid eye drops and elevated steroid level for me during the recovery of it seems to be working well. I have an exit examination on the 20th, and they'll give me my prescription for distance vision at that point, and I'll order a custom monocle for distance vision. At most 90% of the time, what do I need to distance vision for? I sit at a freaking computer in the house. If I'm outside, I don't have to really get great resolution at a distance. I can see palm trees in the distance, and you know, I don't leave the house. So, you know, October I'll leave the house for 3 days, but that's it. I don't even go to the pharmacy anymore. So the Renita picks up meds for me.
So what's going on in the brain in your brain when you can finally, oh wow, I see that I haven't shaved here because I could never see it before. You're seeing new things you didn't see before.
Well, I could see accuracy a lot better. I could see general stuff, but it had a Hollywood fuzz over it. The Hollywood screen where you
Yeah,
can't see wrinkles, and
yeah.
yeah, that cataract is a progressively worse and worse and worse screen, and then it starts to yellow slightly. So you get like an old-fashioned movie, a little cyan color, and no resolution. So. I tell you, my skin is so damn crepey. I can see it now. uh, uh, anyway, yeah, they don't warn you not to look in the mirror when you go home after the cataract surgery. So I made that mistake. Oh my God, look at that. Who's that old man in the mirror?
But
So
like, is something going on in the back of your head, the occipitals there that are like they're readjusting things or
now it had vision before. It just didn't have acuity, and um, it's good to have the added accuracy. I can, I had improper accuracy, but good resolution with my left eye, which did not have a developed cataract. They were shocked. This had a severe cataract. This had almost no cataract at all. And I said, well, it's been covered with a patch for 5 years. So no sun, no cataract. So thus the asymmetric that that how many times you see advanced cataract on one side and hardly any on the other. It'd be an odd situation. So
and then Jay, in a downtime in the Q&A, of course, I have to fill it with my own questions. And one of the questions that came up, which was brilliant because it was mine, was was if you thank you, well played, sir. Did I break Jay Gunkelman? So you go to a gym, you get a personal trainer, and yeah, you're out of shape, but you don't have any really bad symptoms. But you go and you work with the trainer and you get in better shape and you just feel good. And there's no pressure to relieve any symptoms versus neurofeedback, where, from what I hear, all the clinicians are getting all the toughest cases that nobody else wants. Is it possible to flip the script and have it be, I don't know if it's marketing or whatever, but to have a subscription where you're taking care of your brain, every month somewhere, starting with the EEG, starting with a simple, I don't know, CZ or alpha theta training or something. Would you do something like that? If you did, what would it be? How would it be set up for a year for somebody?
well, to start with, uh, the the device that you're going to use would vary in price. and if you're going to use it consistently, having one of your own versus uh, paying per session for one used at an office. Um, the the inexpensive 1-2 channel amps are a few $1,000s a piece, and then you'd have to have somebody figure out what frequencies to train and where and how and you know
Right.
and and what treatment is optimized? Or is it photobiomodulation to get you going, and then neurofeedback, or just neurofeedback,
You got a
or
magic wand, and what could take care of 80% of the
so
population?
there are devices that have avoided the FDA 510K medical so that they could sell to the general public. And those devices include some that are, uh, you know, the uh, they had one electrode on the forehead, and you could float a ball, and little gamey things, and the amps were funky, and the signals were awful, but they've gotten better. Instead of a solid metal detector, they've got polymer coatings, and some actually suggest you wet them, just damp them up and then put them on, So, but the contact and signal quality and processing has advanced, and some of these consumer devices are fairly sophisticated now. Uh, I would suggest that Muse has advanced themselves fairly well into the marketplace, and they're selling to consumers, but there are also a lot of therapists that pick that up as a device for home training kind of use. So there's Sense.AI or Sense.A, Sense SENS.ai. They were early on in the .ai. It's like .com or
Mhm.
.net, .ai, and their device actually uh, has it's gamified. It has tiers, and you have to pass some level of control and uh, uh, demonstrate some uh, reasonable EEG patterns before you can get into trainings that could get you into trouble if you didn't have a therapist kind of clear you already. So they've built guardrails in a bit. They also have an event-related potential testing. And since they're a gamified non-medical thing, they don't call it event-related potential. They call it a brain pulse. So,
Ooh,
you know,
it's good marketing.
you can't call it one thing because that's medical, but you got to call it something. So it's a
Yeah.
brain pulse. It's a flanker task. The arrow says this way, you hit this button. Arrow says that way, you hit this button. So you can actually do a brief flanker test and test your event-related potential. Your P300 is something you can evoke. So they can tell what your processing speed and your error detection and trapping, and all sorts of things you would detect with an event-related potential test. So the training can change how you are responding to the stimuli and responding, and your reaction time, and all these things can be changed. So there's a test to track how you're doing, not just the data during the training, but actually a separate event-related potential test. And that's all built into their system. So and that's something that's intended, you can do some simple things with just buying the device. It's about $1.50, but again, it's three EEG sites, and if you think in terms of a clinical amp, that's a pretty good price, especially as photobiomodulation and HRV also in the same device. So There's there are home training type devices that are intended for general health and wellness, and some of those are uh, uh, kind of bordering into the clinical world. The uh, Divergence Neuro in Canada has set up the ability for a therapist to interface to the client through their service and use all sorts of these smaller uh, devices that may be more general health and wellness oriented originally. So, and they've got more complex ones as well, but it's set up for the interaction to be uh, managed between a therapist and somebody using these home training type devices. So that it can be monitored basically or directed by somebody who's got a credential to kind of direct your therapy.
Because Jay, what I was thinking was everybody as they get older, they would need brain brightening more often than not. I'm trying to take care of 80% of the need to 80% of the
What am
people.
I drooling or something?
But no, it's kind of part of that thinking where, oh my God, I have this thing that nobody else can correct. I'm going to try neurofeedback
Yeah,
versus saying hey, this is my lifespan, and here's where I'm going to use neurofeedback throughout my life to get ahead of things and make it better. And
yeah.
brain brightening is one of those things where whatever the time period is, whatever the age is, you should start thinking about doing. I'm just wondering if there a timeline over the course of someone's life that neurofeedback should be done, whether you quote unquote need it or not.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying the show and want to help us keep it going, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support helps improve the content and brings on great guests and grow the show. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/NeuroNoodle. But hey, if supporting financially isn't in the cards right now, no worries. You can still help us out for free by liking, subscribing, and sharing this episode. It really makes a difference and helps more people find the show. If we've earned it, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode.
Well, uh, there's times when you start to feel like you may be having some changes that you would prefer not having.
Mhm.
Um, you find yourself standing there and wondering, well, what am I standing here for? What did I go to this room for?
That's not
What did
normal.
I did it? What color socks did I put on this morning without looking at them? Or did I even put on socks this morning? So if you're having little fritzy memory issues, it could be just poor sleep and a bad day, and you're fine. But it could be the beginnings of some change that you wouldn't want to have become more permanent. You can be evaluated and there are tests for that, specifically to identify whether you have a traditional age-related progressive change, and you can expect changes with aging. Are you on the normal aging trajectory, or are you a little down from that, a mild cognitive impairment, or have you progressed even further into what would be considered a dementia level for your age? And that's a fairly accurate discrimination at this point. The iSync group have that built into their software as an identification of where you are on that continuum between normal aging, mild cognitive impairment, and dementia. And if you're identified as having a little slippage, uh, they do prescribe photobiomodulation and or neurofeedback, and maybe your doctor has an idea about medication as well. They do have physicians who are doing coursework on using the EEG endophenotypes to help guide medication choice. Gee, I thought that was a good idea. So,
Well, for brain
uh,
brightening, when would you go in and say, you know what, I want to get ahead of head of it?
yeah,
50?
there's the you know, the higher the performance you want, the more likely you are to need a freaking tune-up. So let's say you're at university and there's no cognitive slippage, but you want to be absolutely sharp as a freaking tack because you've got your oral defenses coming up, or
Yeah.
you know uh, the you need to figure out how to sleep better so you can stay awake better, and there are things that you can do to optimize function. So you can go in early if you want to optimize function and be all you can be. If the mental marine
It's kind of what I'm
thing.
saying. Be all you can be through the course of the lifetime. When would you go in without having a symptom that says, you know what, I just want to go in and I just want to keep what I got and maximize it?
Well, to start with, if you're a kid, you don't really have the wisdom to go in early.
Yeah.
Your parents may. And if you're going in for sports, it's not a bad idea to have a baseline. Don't have to analyze it. Stick it in the freaking bank. It's a data bank. This is what I was like when I was young and intact before I got whacked. So, and you can use that later. You don't have to do it, at in infancy unless there's some concern. And again, autism has a high percentage of epileptiform content. There's a possibility of the cerebral folate deficiency as an issue. Again, half to 70% approximately are seen with this cerebral folate deficiency in the autism spectrum. So
So
and it's treatable.
preschool, three
So.
years old?
Well, if you suspect that sort of thing, you need to be going to a specialist to get your. There's something called a developmental pediatrician. It's not just the regular pediatrician that takes care of the sniffles, or broken legs or whatever kids get into, but they look specifically at genetic anomalies. They'll do genetic testing. And behavioral observation. A lot of developmental pediatricians end up having an office floor that's littered with toys. They're down on the floor with the kid trying to interact to see exactly what's going on, and uh, at that level they can identify a lot of things very, very early, and there's a lot of unique genetic outlier things that can be identified. Some are again somewhat treatable. This genetic anomaly for central or cerebral folate deficiency, as an example, they may be rare, but if they identify one, it's a treatable genetic anomaly. Anyway, that it you may need to find it early, but you may feel like your life is going swimmingly well and you've made it through, your developmental trajectory without any particular negative circumstance, no car accidents and no sports injuries, and you're feeling fine, but you're in your 40s and your 50s and you start to think about your cognitive future. You may consider having somebody look and prescribe some tune-up at that point, and optimizing yourself. Again, the higher the performance you're looking for, the more likely you are to need a tune-up. And go to Indianapolis 500. How often do they tune up those cars? So
I guess if you're going from preschool to kindergarten, kindergarten to middle school to high school, college, and then 50. Because I mean, if you're going to get a colonoscopy, they say, what is it, 50? You got to get one. Why isn't it you got to get your
If you're doing an EEG there, you're really,
yeah.
really in trouble.
Well, some people are.
Cranial-rectal impaction. Yeah, yeah. So,
But I mean, going through those time periods, I would think if we market it the right way, you're going from one school to another. Something could happen. You're doing sports. Professional athletes, we'll talk to Lee Steinberg at the event in October in Suisun City, Jay. But if you're going to pay all those guys millions of dollars, you want to make sure their noggins are in place. Different time periods throughout. I was just wondering, if you're getting a colonoscopy, why can't we market it with, hey, get your EEG done to see where you're at
I wouldn't make the analogy to a colonoscopy because that's really got this like negative sort of a connotation to it. Uh, so, uh, but we
Breast exam?
we do routine testing for various conditions, blood tests and so forth on a routine basis, and the you if you've got a developmental concern, it's time to have a kid checked. If you've got a before involvement in contact sports, it's time to have a baseline. If after you've had some sort of an injury of some sort, it's time to have an evaluation.
Yeah.
Um, the aging comes in, and at some point you're going to end up wanting to have some measurement of where you are compared to where you could be, and there are ways to brighten you up if you're starting to slip. Photobiomodulation has been shown to be quite helpful, and the use of that where people have mild cognitive impairment already to avoid slipping into the more demented category and to move further towards the normal aging category has been shown to actually work quite well. There's large studies being done with the Korean database. They've done the work over in Korea, but they're working with Montreal Neurological and Harvard and Oxford. So major institutions doing multi-center collaborative work on this, and and they publish their studies in Frontiers of Neuroscience. So it's all, you know, it, it, other than it being their device, it's open source kind of approach. So
Fair enough. Well, those are the big things, Jay, at our Q&A that we do every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Pacific, and 7 p.m. Eastern. If you have any questions, ask them there. We have Joshua Moore, Anthony Ramos, Dr. Marie, Jay, whoever shows up. It's just like showing up at a bar and you start talking about mental health and neurofeedback. If we can't answer it there, we carry over in today's shows. Another
and I muck up the answer.
that's anybody that says they're an expert in this field, run away, right, Jay?
Absolutely. How can a brain theoretically hold within a brain a complete understanding of a brain? I mean, think about it. It just doesn't fit. So the solution is a network of brains hold in the network an understanding of a brain. So you don't assume anybody has the full picture. Assume they have a piece of it, and it might be a piece you need to latch onto and network with. And at that point, you've got a group of consultants that you can end up working with to end up with a better understanding of what's going on with a specific client, for instance. And our field has a whole bunch of really, I think, good experts with different pieces that they hold. Some functional medicine people that end up knowing the blood chemistry and all the testing that would be done to identify various conditions and treat them, mold and all the various things that can happen. Others that are specialists in EEG assessment, so identifying odd EEG patterns that are rare, those kinds of things. So you just have to network up with folks that end up having the experience. And there's so many different techniques: infra low frequency, infra slow frequency. Those groups have their own techniques. The Coben has his specific group and approach. The SW Loretta, X Loretta approaches. There's lots and lots of different approaches. So you end up having to mate up with people that know the hardware, software, and approaches, clinical approaches as well. So, and it's not like there's one of these. Oh, all those people that are doing this low, or all those people that are doing the X's or SWs or something are idiots, and we're the only ones who are doing it right. Give me a break. There's some truth in every one of those approaches, and you've got to end up mating up with enough people to understand what's real, what's experimental, and not to say that something's experimental isn't something worth doing. When I started in the field, it was all experimental. There was no proof of anything, and it was all experimental. We had to do the work and end up coming up with our own evidence. And at this point, we have a good evidence base to everything. Back when I was president of ISNR and Don Moss was president of AAPB, we agreed that we should have some standards for what you can claim to be effective. And we set up a task force, and the field came together with standards for what kind of structured research you need to have at what level to make what kind of claim. Possibly efficacious, probably efficacious, and then specific. And specific is when the horse race has been run, all the horses have run together, and there's one that's the best, and there's very few that when has that experiment been run? So specificity is something that people may aspire to, but it's not really something that you end up seeing proven out yet. So, but that level is there. You just need to run the horse race.
Jay, you brought up networking. Is there any networking events that are open in October?
Well, there's lots of events that you should keep your eye on, the various regional societies and national and international societies. But once in a while, there's these little groups that get together that are interesting, full of various approaches. And the Suisun Summit is one of those. I can't travel, so people from all over come in here. Macedonia, Singapore, they're popping in from Italy. This year they're coming in from all over the place, and a lot from the U.S. as well. Nick and Tiff will come up from Santa Barbara. We're going to have a good group of interesting folks here. Lee Steinberg to give his perspective on some things. Isabella, the tennis star who recovered from epilepsy, is going to give her perspective on having gone through all the neurofeedback training and come from intractable epilepsy, recommending brain surgery, to being graduating with honors on a tennis scholarship, to being a tennis pro. And anyway, that little group ends up being in October. We pop in on the 8th for a little reception to say hello to everybody and get your registration going and get laid. This is the.
Pardon me? Are you charging enough?
Well, because of the eye surgery, they thought Gunkelman's Island, like Gilligan's Island. So this is all Hawaiian shirts and palm leaves, and when you walk in the door, you get laid, and there's they've got the usual swag of things. This coin which has got a ugly picture of me on one side and the logo on the other side. That there's cups and various swag things, but we have an interesting meeting. We're going to be talking about movement disorders and Parkinsonism and AI interfacing with EEG and EEG lab and analysis and predicting neurofeedback protocols and whether that's a good thing or not. We'll have a pro and con on that. We've got everybody thinks I'm like anti-Z-score. I'm just pro-science. If it's science, that's science, and we've got a fellow coming over from Australia to present Z-score based data. They're looking at exactly what changes in the brain, what's the mechanism when you're doing all of this. So that's a real good study. We had him over earlier, and he kind of presented what they were going to be doing, and we said, well, when you've got data, come back, and he's got data, so he's back.
He's coming back. And then, of course, like we said earlier, Lee Steinberg's going to come by.
Yeah, and we've got talks on TBI rescue. Jay got us and his presentation partner on that. Jessica, you're, it's Santiago Brand. I expect to see lots of old friends and a fair number of students. I've got a request from a student right now who's just can't afford to come and is asking if there's some way.
There's always a way.
I'm such a soft tap, Student in need, okay. So we're figuring out how to take care of that. But it should be fun. We intend to have a lot of good science, but we also intend to have some fun. There'll be a Hawaiian dinner, luau thing, and it's been 3 years since I've shaved. I think it's about time to auction this sucker off and see what we can get. And I know Nick and Tiff really have bid up the beard shaving price, and there might be people bidding against them this year. You never know, but we'll see.
All the information will be in the show notes below in the description.
Yeah, how the auctioning off the beard goes. I put down $2,000 to keep it, and then they have to raise more than that to end up shaving it. So, and if you're bidding in from one side or the other, it's like a poker game. You put your money on the table, you don't get it back. I mean, you may have been outbid by somebody, but your money's in. This is all for students anyway. So
right.
So
the youngins. Jay Gunkelman, another fantastic episode of the NeuroNoodle Neurofeedback Podcast. Thank you for showing up, my friend.
My pleasure. And it's a great way to start the day.
And if anybody has any unanswered questions, every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central Time, show up at the live chat, ask, and if it's not answered there, we'll come here and we'll answer it.
Sometimes I actually make it there too, but my days are, it's hard scheduling.
We'll take whatever we can get from the great Jay Gunkelman. Have a great week. Say hi to the next.
You're blowing a lot of smoke now.
I am. Bye, Jay.
Hey, everyone. If you're enjoying the show and want to help us keep it going, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support helps improve the content and brings on great guests and grow the show. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/NeuroNoodle. But hey, if supporting financially isn't in the cards right now, no worries. You can still help us out for free by liking, subscribing, and sharing this episode. It really makes a difference and helps more people find the show. If we've earned it, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. The NeuroNoodle podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.